MedBricks Webcast is a new kind of healthcare media channel to break the silo mentality and foster interdisciplinary thinking. Our mission is to fill that gap and to create a curiosity through different lenses, tapping the passion that guided the historical figures in medicine and bringing present-day groundbreaking research to the front lines. We interview physicians and leaders in the industry about present-day healthcare challenges on our live programming. Welcome to the MedBricks Webcast. This is Ramanujan, the host of the MedBricks Webcast. No, I'm not Albert Einstein. All my guests are right now. So I'm going to talk with a doctor from near Washington State, Dr. Dike Drummond. He's been he's a leader in the physician coaching. The burnout is unbelievable around the world. It's not just limited to the United States. The burnout of healthcare professionals is just staggering. And I don't know, nobody's at the policymaker level, at the organization level, at the individual level. Somebody has to address that, and we have to do one way or the way. This problem has to be facing. We don't understand. We really understand the problem, but nobody is talking about it. So we'll talk with Dr. Dike Drummond as a very expert in this area of the physician burnout and coaching. He coached more than 40,000 visitors, and he has coaches he's been doing for almost 20 years. He's been there a long time. So, but then after that, I'm going to present a topic it's a very interesting topic on mathematics and medicine. Why strangest abstract math, number theory is called. It is why it is so connected with the medicine. It is very connected with the medicine. It is just a mind-boggling and a portal to something strangest universe. Portal to something strange that I'm going to present to you. It's going to be a fascinating topic. Without further ado, let me bring Dr. Dike Drummond to the stage. Dr. Drummond, welcome to the MedBricks webcast.
Well, thanks, Ramana. Great to be here.
Let me ask you, Dr. Drummond, I see you that just give me your personal and professional background, where you are staying right now. What is your background a little bit?
Yep, I'm beaming in from Tacoma, Washington, on the top left of the United States of America. I'm a family doc by training. For 10 years, I had a very busy rural do-it-all family practice in Mount Vernon, Washington, which is about halfway between Seattle and Vancouver, BC, on I-5. Delivered 500 babies, classic country doctor. And I burned down to my practice in the year 2000 at the age 40. I had an impulse to become a coach at that point. So the first thing I did when I stopped seeing patients was I got certified as a coach. Very fortunate for me. In 2010, I started my full-time physician burnout coaching practice on the web at the website, HappyMD.com. Supposed to be a head snap. HappyMD, there's no such thing. I got to see what this guy's talking about. HappyMD.com. And when I started coaching doctors, I saw patterns in what was burning them out and patterns in what was getting them better. Started writing blog posts. That turned into a book. And now in the years 2011, 12, 13, 14, all of a sudden, all sorts of doctors are becoming employees. These days, 73% of American doctors are employees. But we all remember the days of paper charts and when you had your own practice. So now all of a sudden in the teens, there were all these organizations that employed 100, 200, 300, 500, 1,000 doctors. And the CMOs and the CEOs said, they came to me because they saw my website and said, can you do a training for our doctors to help them not be so burned out and stressed? So I developed a line of trainings. And since 2010, I have actually trained over 40,000 doctors on 4 different continents. And we've also added our individual coaching and individual tools for individual doctors. We've added to that a whole set of retreats and trainings for physician leaders to become a wellness champion and build the corporate burnout prevention strategy for the organization.
I'm a physicist. That one thing I saw, it caught my eye. He said that he created a level 4 and matrix like a sci-fi thing. I loved it. Tell me a little bit about they were level 4s, the burnout, the systemic, the individual burnout, the level 4s.
Well, let's talk about the physics of energy in a physician. Now, the fundamental feature of a person who became a physician is they had to make a choice at one point in time. I call it the fork in the road. You had to make a choice. Was I going to go to medical school or do anything else? And when you made the choice to go to medical school, what you did was you pledged your professional life to the forces of light in the universe. As we battle specific forces of darkness, illness, suffering, death, dying, and family members' crazed attempts to deal with those things. And what happens is, because you care about your work, you want to make a difference as a helper and a healer, your heart and your soul and your identity are in your work, you're at much higher risk for burnout than somebody who's just punching the clock and doing a job. And the key is to keep your energy balances in the positive range. And there's 3 energy tanks inside everybody. There's a physical tank, an emotional tank, and a spiritual tank. If those energy tanks drop below 0, what ends up happening is the symptoms of burnout come out: exhaustion, cynical and sarcastic, and what's the use? And it dramatically affects the doctor's ability to connect with the patient, to offer quality care, to enjoy their practice. And it can actually have complications that include depression and suicide. And suicides double the background rate of folks that aren't doctors. So it's a really serious thing if you allow it to go to the crisis point.
So emotional tank, you said the physical, emotional, spiritual tanks. That's very interesting. That is what physics understand, that the levels of the flow. Yes, and then he said that is a matrix. What is the matrix that you're proposing? Is a treatment options, treatment kind of protocol that is?
Yeah, I mean, the matrix that I did, it's a free report. We have 235 different ways to prevent burnout, but there's 2 ways to get your energy back in balance. You can decrease the amount that you burn, and you can increase the amount that you recharge. With me? And there's 2 places that these energy changes can come from. It can come from you personally taking different actions, and it can come from changing the systems and the organization in which you operate. So lower stress, increase recharge, you can take some responsibility, but somebody's got to be watching the systems of care in the organization and the culture too. Because anytime you have a doctor or a nurse or anybody else taking care of patients inside a healthcare delivery system, it's a perfect canary in a coal mine. Back in the day, the miners took a canary in a cage down with them into the mine. The canary would die in bad air before the miners did.
Oh.
So if the canary's getting sick, you got a bad mine. Right now we have a burnout rate of above 50% in the United States of America. That means that if I were to survey your people at your organization today, we would find that 50% or more of them are, here's the term, suffering from at least one symptom of burnout. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. Let me talk about systemic problem. It is an organization. When I came, I used to live in Georgia, and then I used to meet a lot of doctors, and I used to sell medical computers a long time ago, 1980s. And then most of them are independent doctors. They're not working for anybody. Now what happened is they started working for corporations. They understand the power of the corporations now, their strength and their brutalness and brute forces. So they're waking up for corporate medicine. That is a systemic change I saw. So can you address that a little bit, Dr. Drummond?
Sure. Back in the day, when we were a cottage industry and doctors were in small groups or solo and owned their own practice, that was a specific kind of an entrepreneurial doctor that was comfortable seeing patients, usually in high volumes with paper charts, and comfortable running every aspect of their practice. That kind of a doctor really doesn't exist anymore. That's an old school boomer thing, right? But as we take doctors and put them into an employee position, most of them are being hired by, and they're not being forced into this. They can see the writing on the wall for their own practice profitability, and they ask to be absorbed by the hospital for the most part. But what ends up happening is if you're absorbed by a hospital system, guess what? The hospital's got a lot higher overhead than your little office in town used to. Most doctors I talk to, if they compare their pre-tax income and benefits package to the amount they billed and was collected for the organization in the past year, you'll find that the overhead as an employee doctor is 70%.
It is against the common sense, Dr. Drummond. The hospitals costing more. Why we are supporting hospitals, why the government itself, with the policymakers, politicians, why they're supporting the hospitals, which causes more expenses than, for example, if you go to a outpatient diagnostic center, MRI costs about $500. When you go to the hospital, it costs you $5,000. Why why we need to support this kind of a system that is they're getting more and more powerful, what we are talking about it, and how we are going to address this problem at the policy level, at the political level at least. Do you have some comment on that?
Well, what I'll say is that there is no healthcare system in the world quite like the United States of America. The last healthcare system in the world that did not have a public health system where healthcare was a right and not a privilege was Switzerland. And they became so appalled at the fact that they had a 15% uninsured rate that they voted themselves a national health service in the 1990s. Here, we have the worst healthcare system in the first world, bar none. Most expensive, absolutely atrocious outcomes if you compare us to any European country. And every pig is at the trough of the American healthcare system because you got 18% of the GDP going through there. You can bet your bottom dollar that the differential between hospital-based services and outpatient-based services was somehow bought by a lobbyist who influenced the legislature somewhere to make that the law of the land. And right now, everything is so entrenched by the money and the amount of people in the industry that I can't see the American healthcare system unless it completely collapses, and it is very shaky right now. Go see an emergency room in an inner city these days. It looks like a mini Afghanistan evacuation. Unless everything collapses, no change is going to come from within. There's too much money in the pot.
But Dr. Drummond, I used to live in Georgia. One time the HMOs tried to come in. So Georgia, the doctors at the time, they all got together and educated the patients and told them not to vote for the HMO bill. They fend off the HMOs for a long time with the power that the doctors have with the patients. They have a lot of patients. Patients are the powerhouses. They are the vote banks, and they have the power. Why don't they use that great power that they have to educate the patients in this direction?
Well, you could, but you're talking about 100,000 doctors educating 100,000 people in different places. What's missing is the ability to practice collective bargaining. What's missing is a national set of physician unions. Now, the challenge is, even if we unionized, doctors won't walk out because doctors won't abandon the patient.
Yeah.
The payers will, the providing organizations will. They'll deny payments. They'll deny authorizations. 30,000 in an hour at one of the reports that I saw. But the doctors won't walk off and actually exercise their collective bargaining right. And I'm not a big proponent of unions, but unions would make a big difference if they were here now in enforcing reasonable work conditions for everybody, not just doctors.
You're kind of a resort about commenting about the policymakers, the politicians. They're not big. So, for example, what about the organizations, American Medical Association, a lot of local organizations? Why don't they get together and make a huge proposal and bringing to that system that change in the systemic level at the highest political level?
Yeah, if you look at most associations, especially the AMA, that's typically where they try to exert pressure, is at the national level. And I think personally, and I know this for sure, my job, I consider, is to raise the awareness and help teach doctors, individual doctors. There's 1 million people in the United States approximately who chose to be doctors and made it through the medical education system. I'm just talking about people that are out in practice that are struggling and suffering. And there are things you can do today about your practice that will make your day better, your team better, and your patient's experience better. We can't wait for things to change at the national level. The question is, can you take your practice and find a job where your practice fits so that you can make the difference you chose to make at the Lightworkers Fork in the Road inside this system that we have? Color inside the lines and still exercise your creativity.
So very good. Well said. So at the organizational level, suppose for you're at the organizational level, what kind of things you suggest hospitals or health plans, what are they can do for the healthcare professionals themselves And insurance can payers in themselves. If you want to include payers, that's also fine. What they need to do to reduce this burnout, as you said, that Switzerland and other countries, they recognize the burnout as a condition. But the United States, there is no condition, there is no ICD code for the burnout. So how do we, organizational level, what kind of things you suggest to implement at least at the middle level, organizational level, at the hospital level, health plan level?
Well, and most of the times that I'm helping people as a consultant with organizational burnout prevention strategy, it's at the level of the employing organization, the organization that provides the care and employs the doctors. And the best way to build a starting burnout prevention strategy is with 4 different buckets. These 4 things, if you put them together and coordinate them with a wellness committee that has a skilled leader at the top, can make a huge difference. Number 1 is education. Everybody shows up at their job in a healthcare organization, doctors, nurses, everybody else, with a great big hole in their education because they've never been taught how to recognize and prevent burnout. We've actually identified 7 skill sets that are missing from medical education. So there's education. There has to be social and cultural activities. We have to get together outside of work and build human connections. That's what builds our culture. And if you don't party enough, you don't even, I sit on the stage a lot during the year, 200 people in the audience. I say, how many of you looking around here can see somebody you've never met before? And it's a medical staff for a hospital. How many of you can see somebody you never met ever before? How many hands go up? Everyone, every time. So these are organizations where you don't even know your partners. So education, social and cultural, crisis management. You have to have a rock solid crisis management function, more than EAP, to make sure that people don't end up on the side of the road or committing suicide on your watch. I had 2 organizations in 2021 approach me. And when I asked the C-suite leaders on the line, why are you talking to me and why now? They looked at each other kind of sheepishly and they said, yeah, I think it was the 3rd suicide.
Oh,
hang on a second. First wasn't enough. Second wasn't enough, but you can't fit 3 bodies under the rug. That was criminal, I thought. So education, social and cultural, crisis management. And the last one is you have to do process improvement. That is process improvements whose goal is reducing stress on the workers to decrease the amount of energy that they burn. So under ordinary circumstances, your process improvement projects are to increase income and see more patients and actually make people do more work. But when you're doing a wellness process improvement project, what you're doing is surveying a crew, asking what stresses them out, picking one of those stressors and relieving it, taking it away so that they can get their job done without putting so much time and energy into it. And so with those 4 and a solid communication plan so everybody knows what you're doing, this is another weak spot for everybody I've ever seen. So everybody knows what you're doing. With that in place, you've got a starting strategy.
There is one thing is missing in your, that you didn't mention about the pressure of the documentation, electronic medical records, the technology itself, humongous pressure on doctors.
Right, it's number 1. It's always number 1.
Pardon me?
Documentation and digital data flow pressures are always number 1 in every survey that's ever been done.
Correct. So that is the biggest stress on the doctors. This documentation, the pressures on this one is a very big thing. So let us talk about
just so you know, a big piece of this education bucket is how to master documentation.
Really,
it's one of the bright points. One of the bright points in what I hope AI will do for us is allow us to use semi-automated procedures to get the chart note done more quickly.
You know, the name physicians itself, they represent physical, taking care of the physical body. So they don't understand, as you said, that they don't recognize the burnout because they never really paid attention to the mental side. There is a mind that plays a critical role that they didn't pay attention. Do you agree with that?
I need you to be very careful right now. You're blaming the victim. Okay.
Okay.
Then you're not a doctor, right?
Yes, I'm not a doctor.
Right. Okay. So let me just tell you.
Okay.
Do you know how long it takes to graduate? If you start in medical school and you end up in practice as a board certified doctor, do you know how long that takes? Between 7 and 16 years.
Correct.
While you're in the medical education system, there is one goal, and that's to survive, to make it to the finish line. Nothing else matters.
Yeah.
and in medical school and residency, it used to be a lot worse. It's perhaps better today, but I'm not sure that's universally true. It didn't matter how you made it to the finish line. You could be missing one eye and 3 fingers off your left hand, but as long as you crossed that finish line, you were out. And what do they call the person who graduates last from their medical school class? They call them doctor. So what ends up happening is you drive your own awareness of your stress levels, of your need for food and rest and using the restroom underneath. They're driven underground by the 2 prime directives of healthcare. Number 1 is the patient comes first. You have to have an off switch on that because that's not healthy if you can't recharge. And the second prime directive of healthcare is something nobody mentions. It goes like this: never show weakness. Never do anything to make anybody think you haven't got what it takes. And under those conditions, you are radically conditioned to not be aware of and not pay attention to your own stress levels. So it's not that they don't know it, it's that it's been driven out of them. Just be clear.
Oh, sorry that if I came across wrong that way.
No,
Sorry
everybody
about
does. No, that was perfect. Thank you for being so patient with me to be able to make this teaching
that.
point.
No,
But if
actually
you
I'm
think,
reiterating your
if you think
point.
doctors are making conscious choices to not take care of themselves, that's not true. This was beat out of them in residency, and maybe, just maybe, it's different today.
I'm reiterating actually what you said, that education is the number one. That number one education is that recognizing that's a part of the education, is recognizing their own burnout. That's what you said. And just I'm trying to reiterate that is the one thing you can emphasize, that recognizing as you're driven out of them, as you say, so they need to be re-educated, realign themselves.
Well, and hang on a second. So what we found is that there's 7 skill sets that are missing from medical education that are the things that are absolutely necessary for you to have a long and healthy career as a doctor after you graduate. Number 1 is, how do you define and create your own personal ideal practice? Number 2 is, what are tools to get home sooner, especially documentation tools to get your documentation done, tools to build life balance, tools to manage your boss, since you're probably going to be an employee. Yeah. Leadership power tools so you can manage your team more effectively so you don't have to work so hard. And last but not least, a specific set of skills to be able to find a new job when this one's not working out. Residents are horrible at interviews, just horrible, because they look for their job the same way they look to get into medical school and residency. Pick me, pick me. No, it really doesn't matter if they pick you. You want to make sure you're picking a job that's at least a 70% match for your ideal job description.
Dr. Drummond, how much stigma plays a role here? Doctors, don't seek help. Yeah.
There's another word I'll add to stigma. Stigma, trauma. So stigma, people don't ask for help because typically they're ridiculed if they do. And on the inside of a doctor who says, oh man, I'm struggling, I'm going to need to ask for help, there's so much shame, there's so much blame, there's so much imposter syndrome. What if they find out, right?
Yeah.
But the second thing you have to remember is that everybody's traumatized during the course of their education and their practice. So there are stories that every doctor never tells because it's just too painful. And there's a whole bunch of different ways that comes back to affect their behavior as well.
Let's talk about spirituality a little bit. I don't know whether you heard about this Mother Teresa effect. It is, if you are dedicated for some kind of a spiritual goal, you have that spirituality, you feel less burnout. Harvard study is done on that one. Do you think spirituality has a role in the physician, in the burnout syndrome?
When I use the word spiritual, when I'm discussing doctors and energy, I'm talking about your connection with your purpose. And usually that is a promise that you made a long time ago, that I am going to make a difference. I'm going to be a helper and a healer. And when you're connected with that essence, it provides energy. But if you're not connected with that essence, if you're in a job that doesn't give you the time or the support or the resources to make the difference you want to make with your patients, that same spiritual connection causes you to overextend yourself right into burnout. This is the evil. This is the evil of staffing issues in many jobs. Because if I have 4 doctors and 4 medical assistants, and I lose 2 of the senior partners, so I've only got 2 doctors, and now we've only got 1 medical assistant, but we're still showing up and seeing the patients. You know what that looks like in the profit and loss statement? that looks like an incredibly profitable wing. There's no reason financially for them to actually get you your partners back or give you your MAs back. So this is when bean counters lean on the ethics and the morals of the doctors to keep seeing the patients. And this is when people break. You find them curled up in the fetal position, covered in their own snot in the women's bathroom.
Yeah. Spirituality is a kind of an abstract and certain people think spirituality is an abstract, but I tell you, one of the spirituality much more mathematical. I'm going to present you a topic on the spirituality and mathematics, something strange that I'm going to show you.
I want to hear it
together. When you come back, and I will ask you, HappyMD, HappyMD.com.
The HappyMD, the HappyMD.
Yeah, that's when I come back. We'll ask more about your organization and things. Let me present a little bit of these things, and you and me watch together. Okay, then let me put both of us together, and you can watch this in bottom. Yeah,
there you go.
This is I'm going to introduce you a topic on life, death, God in numbers. It's as abstract as it is. Life itself is abstract, death is abstract, God is abstract. But we can, as you said, that Dr. Drummond was saying about the spirituality, and there's a cross section, there is a mathematical aspect to it. I'm going to talk about that. Okay, let me. So in the March 2020, in the Wuhan outbreak came in December or January. We don't know exact dates. January 2020 came out, and then the Dr. Rao Jia is from Tsinghua University, announced the genetic sequence of the coronavirus in March 2020, January 2020. He announced it somewhere around there. We don't know the murky details from China, but that is the best we can get. So when he announced it, when he announced that genetic sequence, immediately University of Texas at Austin, Daniel Rapp and Nathan Wang and with the Jason McCollum lab picked it up, and they immediately identified the spike protein. When you identify the spike protein, immediately we went to the lockdown. As you all know, March 12th is lockdown. The entire world went lockdown, entire planet. Almost unbelievable. So March 18th, 2020, Trump administration announced a Defense Production Act. That means all the federal resources are allocated to find the actual solution and the treatment for the COVID infection, coronavirus. So they went to the IBM Summit computer, the fastest computer on the planet. It's located in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. I went there. My friend lives there, Ram. I want to say hello to him. Ram Upaluri lives there. His father was a mathematician working there in that Oak Ridge labs, national lab. That is the epicenter. If you see Oppenheimer, that is where Manhattan Project was started. But this computer is located in the Oak Ridge, Tennessee, in the corners of the Tennessee. It does 200,000 trillion operations per second. Can you believe this? Our minds don't even think about that kind of thing. 200,000 trillion operations per second. It does floating point operations. It is just unbelievable amount of speed it does. So immediately the user of this computer, what they did was they started trying to find a treatment for the COVID. So what they did was they fed the 8,000 molecules. That's billions and billions and billions of data. The molecules they fed into this IBM Summit computer, the fastest computer on the planet. It took 2 weeks continuous running, this fastest computer on the planet, and it came out with the 77 molecules, possible treatment for the COVID. Possible treatment. It is not a final, but it's saying this identified out of 8,000 molecules after working 2 weeks non-stop with 200,000 trillion operations per second. It took a long 2 weeks, came out. But I tell you, that is so the volume of the data that involves 8,000 molecules is just unfathomable, out of reach of the human mind. Time scales are just enormous. If you really computationally, it is enormous. So I'm going to give you an example of that, how you do that. I'm going to show you a story. Then I'm going to play that story, that Indian mythological story. It tells you something about our mind, exponential, how quickly we lose the mind of that, who cannot understand that this concept. I'm going to play this video. Please watch with me. Why it's not playing, but I don't know why. Oh, sorry, I put the wrong one. Just give me 1 minute, sir. Okay.
Ambalapooza is a small town in southern India which is famous for two things: the Sri Krishna temple and Pal Payasam. Pal Payasam is a dessert that's made mostly of sweetened boiled milk and rice. According to legend, the king of Ambalapooza was a big chess enthusiast, and he often challenged visitors to a game. One day, a travelling sage arrived at the court of the king and challenged him to a game of chess. The king accepted and asked the sage what he'd like as a prize if he won. The sage said he'd like some rice. He'd like 1 grain of rice on the first square of the chessboard, and for the number to be doubled for each square after that. So the king put a single grain of rice on the first square, 2 grains on the second square, 4 on the third and 8 on the fourth. He looked at the grains and thought, what a ridiculously modest prize. He accepted the sage's wish, and the game began. The sage played well and easily won. True to his word, the king ordered a bag of rice to be brought and started to count out the grains onto the squares. He was shocked when he got to just the 12th square and found that he needed to put 2,048 grains onto it. He realized that the prize was going to be a lot bigger than it had first seemed. After a long calculation, he figured out that for the 30th square, he'd need about 536 million grains. By the 40th square, he'd need about 550 billion grains of rice, and for the last square, the 64th, he'd have to count out a staggering 9,220,000 trillion grains. Altogether, he'd have to give the sage about 18,500,000 trillion grains. A single long grain of rice weighs, on average, about 0.029 grams, so the total weight of rice that the king needed to give the sage was about 535 billion tons. That's more than 1,000 times greater than all the world's milled rice production in 2019-20. The king realized it was impossible for him to pay his debt. In the legend, the sage turns out to be the god Krishna in disguise. When he saw how upset the king was, he appeared to the king in his true form. He told the king that he didn't have to settle the debt immediately, but could pay it over time. So the king started to serve Pal Payasam in the temple free every day to pilgrims until the debt was cleared. In mathematics, this kind of growth is described as exponential, and as we've seen, it can give rise to large numbers very quickly. The function describing the number of grains of rice per square is 2 to the x minus 1, where x is the number of squares, and you can see from the graph how steeply it grows.
So anyway, so that grains, that goes, you can comment anything, Dr. Drummond, if you want to make any comment. So the exponential growth is just is out of our minds. We think that simple thing is asking for the double the rice. It's so simple, 64 squares. This is another, I will give you another example of this. How big. So there is suppose your wife, you're married and your wife is wearing a pearl necklace. If you take the pearl necklace and she went to the party with you, she came back from the dinner and then dropped her jewelry in the jewelry box, the pearl necklace. The way it falls, that's a pattern. It falls on a pattern, random pattern, right? If you want to get the exact pattern, same pattern, it takes thousands of years. Every day you do, once a day, you do thousands, if not millions of years to bring that same pattern. It's so simple, very simple act. It became a very complex act. I'm going to give you another example. This is a traveling salesman problem in the computers. It's a huge. All computer science students study this problem. If you take a traveling salesman, if you have 5 cities, you cannot revisit the same city twice. And then what are the possible ways you can go 5 cities? 120 times. 10 cities, 3 million times, 3.5 million times. By the time we come to 20 cities, you cannot revisit the same. What are the possible ways you can do? It is 2.43 quintillion times. You cannot solve this problem. It is called a non-polynomial problem in mathematics. You cannot solve it with our present-day computers. It takes 1 million years to solve this problem. So it's so simple. All the airlines, fuel savings, they come to the closest thing, but this is the problem they face, the traveling salesman problem. It's a very common problem and we see in every day. So if you want to do simplicity to complexity, you take a piece of paper and then you throw it out in a crumpled, and then you want to get the exact pattern. You can do origami, or you do a crumpled paper. If you do that, it takes billion years to get the exact pattern. So simple as that, right in front of our eyes. That is a complexity we are bringing, very strange. So building blocks of the life is amino acids. As you know, let us talk about the life, death, God in numbers. I was talking about the life. Let us talk about the life part of it. Life is amino acids are the building blocks of the life. There are 20 amino acids. They produce proteins. They create a change in the proteins. I'm not a biologist, as Dr. Drummond says. I'm a physicist, so I'm going to talk. I'm not. So 20 times 100 chains. Amino acids form a chains. And then you know that how many times it does? It is like a staggering number of the proteins it can form out of those 20 amino acids with 100 chains. The staggering quintillion. He's talking about trillion, billion times. It's like just a mind-boggling number, huge numbers. So protein can form that. It may have a constraint. It may not be able to do all. Protein folding, for example. If we take a protein folding, it characteristics, that's what the function of the proteins are. They're coolies of our body. They do the hard work. So if you have a 20 to 50 if you put together a 20 to 50 amino acid chains, the insulin, for example, is simplest one. I think that's a protein, hormone protein. And then if you do really possibilities are 1,000 non-linear. We never heard even the name non-linear, like a billion times. Forget about the numbers. So it is just out of the understanding of this our mind. So these are the numbers. Life is. So what is a death? Death. We have 110 billion people, humans died so far. Let us talk about the perspective on the life itself. And then 22.5 quintillion animals died. These are the numbers, are huge numbers. I'm coming to a point why life is. So human brain has limitations because evolutionary, when you are coming from savannas of Africa, we don't have that limitation. We have a limitation. The reason was we don't want to be eaten by a lion. So we don't think about a trillion numbers, how they compute. So we left that big numbers alone, and then we have evolution limitation is there. Memory, hippocampus, and other parts of the memory is limited. We cannot absorb as much. So these are two limitations human brain has. So you cannot understand the big numbers. But one man is out of this world. I don't know how he understood infinity. He understood huge numbers. His name, boy who loved numbers. His name is Sreenivasa Ramanujan. He was born in a temple city called a road, Kumbakonam, it's called, in a temples and gods and goddesses, Hindu gods and Hindu goddesses. They were surrounded by. Ramanujan was born in a small town. It's a lot of very pilgrim town. Tamil Nadu, India, is a southern part of India. I'm a neighboring state, but at that time, actually, we are the same state. So his name is Sreenivasa Ramanujan. It's a long name, but I tell you something about him. He is as mysterious as you can get. So he was a math madness. He was producing by the teenage years. He never went to school. School kicked him out because he is failing in every subject and only he's talking about mathematics. So they kicked him out. So he got a job as a clerk in the like Albert Einstein was a clerk in the patent world. He was a clerk in the Madras port. He was working in the Madras port as a port for the British. We are under the British rule at the time. He was working as a British. He's 1887. Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you. He was born in 1887. It's not this last few years. 1887 he was born. So he's producing a strange, just mystic equations. Very strange equations he's producing. One of them I showed you there. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus all the way you add it to the infinity, the equals to minus 1 over 12. You add all the integers to the infinity, the answer is minus 1 over 12. It's just beyond our understanding of our brain. How he came up, it is really true. And then what he did was he started writing. He was writing all this in a slate. At the time, I used to use a slate actually in my village. So you write something and erase it because you can save it. So only important equations he was putting on the piece of paper because he wanted to save paper. At the time, it's expensive, the ink, and so he was doing a lot of calculations on the slate, and he was doing a lot in the oil lamp. He produced the mind-boggling equations, and he sent his equations to. What he did was he sent it to G.H. Hardy, a professor in Trinity College in the Cambridge. He sent his letter saying that I did all these things. Can you see my equations? English professors were stunned to see this guy is producing these equations. He's not even a mathematician. He didn't have a degree. And he's producing these equations. Something strange about him. Let us talk with him. And then they corresponded. They invited him to, even though he was not qualified to go there as a study, they invited him to study in the Cambridge, England. Then he was just like that, exactly like that, the one I showed you in the picture. Then he has to take a picture he has to change his picture into, he's a little plumpy guy. And then he's a very unassuming guy. He's put a jacket and a tie, like me now. So he did that first picture of the passport. He did that. And Madras port, he left for England in the Trinity. And then he produces So when he went there, all the professors asked him, how did you arrive these equations? Ramanujan, we are stunned. These things you are producing is just out of this world. G.H. Hardy is one of the well-known mathematicians in the world. And he was asking Ramanujan, how did you? He said that Goddess gave it to me in the dreams. Then he said, what? This conversation, actually, biography is written in a similar way. Is what Goddess is? I have a name, Namagiri, the picture on the right-hand side. She is giving me all the equations. I have a photo. These are Western people who are trained in the highest order of mathematics in logic and reason were stunned. Never mind. Sorry, we asked you, and they left him alone. So he was answering. His goddess is giving his equations, mathematical equations of the highest order. So don't laugh at it. What other people? He said that I'm going to say. Just give me 1 second. What these top people said. If you had that answer, our God is giving me in the pictures. People will laugh, and then they will at the end of the career for that guy. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of give me 1 second. What the people said about him. Okay, I'm going to read it. So Michio Kaku says Sreenivasa Ramanujan was the strangest man in the mathematics, probably in the entire history of science. He has been compared to the bursting supernovae, illuminating the darkest, most profound corners of mathematics. Then Freeman Dyson is institute from Princeton, where Einstein was there. He's a physics professor. Ramanujan had some sort of a magic tricks that we don't understand, says the late Freeman Dyson of the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton. Mark Zuckerberg said, the Facebook CEO, with a partial math book, he did the entire modern mathematics and moved the field forward. Just think about if he had access to the internet. Ken Mono, the professor of mathematics of Emory University in Atlanta, who studied the Ramanujan papers in detail, says Ramanujan's work in the mathematics is the epitome of intuition. For a brief window of time, for 5 years, he lit the world of math on fire. G.H. Hardy is a well-respected professor of mathematics at Cambridge and the direct supervisor of Ramanujan, said, the most satisfying thing in my life was meeting my studying student Ramanujan. And Stephen Wolfram wrote a beautiful essay on the Sreenivasa Ramanujan. Is one of the leading mathematicians. Stephen Wolfram wrote a lot of things on that thing. So it is just you cannot, when you say that God has given the equations, you laugh at it. A man who understood the large numbers. We are afraid of mathematics. That's why doctors went to medicine, because they are afraid of mathematics. Dr. Drummond may not agree, but most of them they didn't like mathematics. But actually, other way around, mathematics is afraid of Ramanujan. He frustrated the mathematicians to the core, with his numbers, with his equations, and all those things. He understood a man who knew infinity. You saw probably a movie came out on him. It's called A Math Who Knew Infinity, Dev Patel, that was there. So he really mastered the big numbers. So where do you get the big numbers in the human body, in the medicine? We have 36 trillion cells in the human body, 39 trillion bacteria in the gut, 1 billion neurons, 1 trillion connections of the neurons in the brain. 4 septillion. We don't even know what a septillion is. Like just don't even think about writing a zeros on it. It's a huge 4 septillion hydrogen atoms. Why do we need to know hydrogen atoms? When you do an MRI, all the hydrogen atoms in the body, H2O, align with the MRI. So that hydrogen atom actually contributes to the MRI images. 11,000 trillion oxygen atoms in the body. Why 11,000 trillion atoms in the oxygen? During the COVID, we are restored, even though we have 11,000 trillion oxygen atoms, they didn't have a few atoms available for them to breathe. So we need to understand these big numbers, even though it doesn't make understanding these big numbers makes a lot of sense in that sense, in the scientific point of view and the medicine point of view. So billions of data that they fed into the computer on the IBM Summit, that huge number produces the life and gives it. It took 2 weeks to a fastest computer on the planet, but it would have taken 20,000 years without a Ramanujan's help. It would have even come close to 77 molecules. It would have gone billion years to compute the fastest computer. Ramanujan mathematics, inspired mathematics, drove the computer, IBM, the super fast computer, to craziness. He drove one of the fastest computers on the planet with his mathematics. He is not alive, but he was Ramanujan Fourier series, Ramanujan libraries. They drove this computer to the fullest extent. So Ramanujan mathematics revealed something. For example, if Ramanujan mathematics signal processing is so powerful, Ramanujan mathematics, EEG epilepsy is a big problem. We don't know exactly what cells is causing the epilepsy. You can go and remove it. So we don't have any mechanism without opening the brain. It's a very dangerous one, right? Neurosurgery. So EEG epilepsy, you can non-invasively, with the Ramanujan's mathematics, Ramanujan signal processing in a filter banks, you can exactly find out which cells playing this game, causing the epilepsy. Heart rate variability, or the same thing with heart complexity, heart rate variability, complexity. You can use a Ramanujan signal processing and you predict the heart attacks in the future. This is a Ramanujan But let me talk about, I talked about life, I talked about death. Let us talk about God in numbers. Why is it such a mystic equations he has? That equations are so mystic. So I want to tell you something about Mahabharata, the epic Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita. Indians, Hindus, we are sacred about Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is a sacred textbook in Hindu religion. In the Hindu religion, there is a two warriors, Pandavas and Kauravas, two warriors. You don't have to remember all the names. There is a battle between them. They're cousins, actually. They're fighting for the lands. During the land, there is a warrior, is Arjuna. He said that I cannot kill my cousins. They're all cousins on their side. And then Krishna, the chariot, is a jockey for that chariot. He said that you took him outside, and he gave the song of Bhagavad Gita, the song of God. Bhagavad Gita means song of God. He gave the most profound knowledge and wisdom of the life. That is so powerful wisdom and knowledge that he gave. He was telling time is an illusion. It's all these things. It's just you're a mere actor in the whole game. That's what he was telling. Krishna was telling Arjuna. But in the modern world, all these things, and they think it's a cuckoo. So he wanted to show something interesting. Arjuna, he gave a special sight. He gave a special sight to, oh, sorry, I moved too much here. So, okay, 1 second, I went too far. So he gave a special sight, divine sight. So Arjuna, the Lord Krishna gave a divine sight, to a blessed divine, because we are three-dimensional. He produced a multi-dimensional form to impress Arjuna, his warrior. He wanted to show that the multi-dimensional form for me is not a philosophy. I'm not talking about knowledge, some cuckoo knowledge. I want to show you real world, real universe. And then he went on to the multi-dimensional form, transcendental form of Lord Krishna showed. That he could not see, because humans, we are 3D bonded. Three-dimensionally, we are bounded by 3 dimensions. So he gave a special sight, a divine sight, he blessed to the Arjuna. See my universal form of my form is omnipotent, everywhere, unlimited power, omniscient, know everything, omnipresent, everywhere, anytime, any place. That the form he showed Lord Krishna. I tell you why it is connected with the Ramanujan mathematics. Ramanujan, there is something special mathematics. It is as crazy as that what I showed you just now, the transcendental form of Krishna. In mathematics, there is a monsters, MC Escher and Moonshine, very strange names. It's a funny names, but it is a very strange, I tell you indeed. So it came out if you see the chair in the bottom of the left side, second row, I put a chair. In the mathematicians, they put groups together. If you rotate a chair in a horizontal way, that's a one group. If you do vertical way, that's a group. If you do different shades also can move. If you put a shadow also can move, that is a group. So they create a billions of groups, infinite series they call. So you can classify the nature, entire objects and everything into the groups. That's called group theory. And don't worry about all the mathematics, but in this group theory, there's one group, strangest group, is called a monster group. It is a huge group. This group means these rotations, symmetries of the rotations of these particular mathematical objects. This group this is a 26 groups. They did not fit anywhere. Mathematicians surprised, because infinite series, everything is infinite, everything followed by some general rules, but these 26 groups are not fitting anywhere. One of those groups in the 26 groups is a monster group. That group is so mysterious, so kind of a portal, maybe a portal to the other worlds. Portal, something strange. Mathematicians surprised a lot of mathematicians. It gave that group there is a moonshine. The objects are called moonshine objects. I'm not the mathematician. I'm doing my best. Dr. Kachru, if I say something wrong, please excuse me. I'm doing my best here. So this group is a very complex theory. So this monster group, the 26 groups out of that group doesn't fit anywhere. One of the group is called a monster group. In that monster group, they identified some objects called moonshine objects. They are so mysterious. They gave a revelation about 196,883 dimensions. Actually, my professor in John McKay in Concordia, where I went to school, he was the discoverer of these dimensions in Concordia, Montreal, where I went to school. This phone gave 196,883 dimensions. We cannot even see 3 point. How can you see 196,883 dimensions that there exist in a portal? That's something related with the MC Escher's tessellations. I'm not sure exactly how they're connected, but it's something these are all very well connected. They came. So Ramanujan went back to India. He was dying, and he wrote a piece of paper, and he submitted modular functions. Just wrote on a piece of paper and sent it to, when he had a tuberculosis, some kind of a disease he could not survive in England. He went back at the age of 32. He went back, and in the last year of his life, he wrote these mathematical equations out of this world, out of this, a portal to the entire new universe. He gave a divine sight through mathematics. The divine sight, Arjuna, the Lord Krishna gave it to Arjuna. Ramanujan gave the mathematicians a new insight, a mathematical tool to see inside. It is just a mind-boggling. That is related to the string theory. They've connected that one. The physicists connected with the higher dimensions of string theory. It's strangely connected. After passing 8 years, he died in 1920. He died, but after passing 1920, he gave these equations. Before these equations, they found out his lost notebook in England. It's somewhere lying down there. They found this Mach theta function, modular functions they call Mach theta functions. These functions are really a portal to something extraordinary. It's out of this world. So that is connected with higher dimensions. Maybe UFOs, you can use that. Maybe they're using those. So black holes, we saw all of everybody heard about the black holes. Black holes are inside. We don't have an access to inside the black hole, because there is nothing that comes back out of the black hole. Everything goes in, including the light. It won't come out. But Ramanujan mathematics can go inside and dwell into what's going on inside. So his mathematics people are really strangely that they're exploring. Ramanujan, 100 years, in 1920 he died. And that he never even heard about the black holes. Einstein just published, the year he passed away, he published his general relativity, Einstein. Nobody knows even any about these gravitational things. So he gave mathematical equations to the black holes inside. String theory. String theory is the physics part of the string theory. Higher dimensions, one of the fundamental, all the particles are made up of strings, energy strings. And the microorganisms, viruses, bacteria, billions and trillions, how you handle them. Even the ATMs, integer functions, how do you distribute the nodes? Integer partitions are very complex. So he gave mathematics of highest order. At the age of 32, he died. He gave to the world highest order of the mathematics. A man who was, Ramanujan, life lives on, one of the top people in the world, powerhouses of the mathematics and physics. One is Miranda Chang in the Amsterdam University, and Manjul Bhargava. He won the field medal, won a Nobel Prize for the mathematics. I met him actually in a strange encounter as that Ramanujan mathematics. I bumped into him into the Starbucks, and then I was asking him just a general question. I didn't know who is he. I asked him, "What is your name?" He said, "Manjul." I'm Indian, so yeah, he's Indian, and I tell you where you can get Indian food. He told me some place, and then I asked him, "What do you do?" "I'm a professor in Princeton." I said, "Oh, what? You look like a student, high school dropout. What the hell are you doing?" He's a professor. He won the field medal, Nobel Prize of the mathematics. So I wrote him an email. He responded back. Very nice guy. So Dr. Sumit Kachru, I met him. He's a friend of mine. Dr. Sumit Kachru in the Stanford, he's a director of the theoretical physics in the Stanford University. They're all working on Ramanujan mathematics. So Ken Ono is a professor who went to India. His father made a bust. His father is a mathematician. Ken Ono's father, he gave a bust of Ramanujan to as a gift. And then John Duncan of the Emory University, they're all working on the Ramanujan. There's a lot of powerhouses out of universities, IBM computers, the fastest computers, the power, the intellectual prowess of the powerhouses are working on. 100 years ago, a man who lived wrote equations on the slate. On the slate, he used a mathematics. He wrote these equations with the lamp, that is the kerosene lamp. It's not electricity, is not there. He wrote with a slate. He drove the entire world, the best computers in the world, best minds in the world, working on a simple man, one man's world. Think about the power of a human mind, unparalleled intuition. That is, it is beyond our imagination. So the mind is so powerful, as Dr. Drummond is talking about. We have to preserve it. So let me bring him out, the Dr. Drummond, back to the just a minute. Okay, Dr. Drummond. Okay, can you see me? Yeah, I'll see. Just a minute. Give me that, both of us. Just a minute. Just give me that 1 second. I'm going to turn off this. Okay.
And
let me just give me 1 second. 1 second.
So remember the legend of Ambalapooza, and if you're ever in town...
A little bit problem here, the technical issues, as usual. Just, okay, I can do that, yeah.
Well, and as you were showing us the exponential curve, what's happened is that in my lifetime, all information in all fields has accelerated so that new information is accumulating and has now gone vertical. And it used to be that a doctor could keep track of developments in their specialty with a couple of journal subscriptions and reading for a few hours a month. And now all of us, because the growth in information has gone vertical, all of us have to depend upon Google and other search engines. We use Google just as much as our patients do because we can't keep up. And this blinding complexity is one of the drivers of burnout these days. But what I'd like to do is just reduce it all to one. You have one life. It rolls out in the present moment. You can try and affect things in the past and in the future, but you can't. You can only do it here in the present. So take a breath, let it all go, and decide what you're going to do in this moment in time. And if you as a physician are not satisfied with your practice or your life at this point, ask yourself, what would I like it to be? And then take a new action that will head you in that direction. Baby steps make change over time. That's how you take dissatisfaction with your career, stress, overwhelm, and turn it into something that hopefully you can carry on as a functioning doctor for a long and healthy career.
Thank you. It's a wonderful advice. Thank you, Dr. What is your website, Dr.
It's
Drummond?
thehappymd.com.
thehappymd.com.
And I'm all over Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and all that. So my name is unique. So you could just punch that in too.
Yeah, your name is definitely
Thank you so
unique.
much, Ramana. Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
It is an honor to talk with you, sir. Thank you so much.
I did not know about Ramanujan. I did not know about him. So I'm going to look him up for sure.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So thank you all. Good night. And then let me bring this. I have a little computer problems, the stress that we have with all these things. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, bye. I don't know why it is. Yeah, thank you, sir. Good night. And I'm going to close this one. It's already late. So I'm trying to where is this ending? Okay. I cannot do this. and leave. Okay.
It still says live on my screen. Oh, he's gone. Okay, so I'm going to leave.